Wow, this is so cool. Welcome, James Bruner, to Red River Podcast, where we talk pretty much movies and music and pop culture. And let me just give you the reason. Like we're obviously big action fans. You know, we're of the same age. And Brian up there, Parker, was like, we should do an episode on Invasion USA because it's like our favorite Chuck Norris movie. So in my head, I'm thinking, like, wouldn't it be fun to like I asked Sam Furstenberg, who we had on, if he knew anyone that worked on that movie, and he mentioned you and Aaron. So thank you so much for being here, because I mean, the movies that you wrote, we grew up on.
Absolutely. Great to be here. It's good to see you guys semi in person here.
Yes. So now your work, I know you continue to work with Bruner and Stevens, I think it is, right?
Yes.
So, but I really like for a guy like you, like your first credit that I saw was Eye for an Eye with Chuck Norris from '81. Like, how does a guy like you get into this business? Because I think that's fascinating.
Well, this is back in the Stone Age, almost literally. And I grew up in Wisconsin. I made Super 8 movies in high school and went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, took film courses, but that was just watching Wild Strawberries and Virgin Spring and other Bergman movies and going, okay. And never thought I have a degree in ancient medieval history, which actually has ended up being very good in screenwriting. But I ended up out here in California just by total accident. I was living at the beach. It was March. I didn't want to go back to Wisconsin because now I wear a winter jacket all the time. But when I first moved out here, I was in a t-shirt year round.
Yeah. Big difference.
And I was working odd construction jobs, and I guess I didn't want to go back home. So a friend of mine, actually back up for a second, in college, I wrote some articles for some wargaming magazines and history magazines. Gary Gygax had a publication called The Dragon, and I met him, played D&D with him back in the day. But so this friend of mine, so you wrote these articles. Why don't you write a screenplay? I have a cousin that works at Warner Brothers. And I'm like, I love movies. This is great. Screenplay. Never seen one. Don't know what it looks like. And I knew literally no one in the entertainment industry. So I thought I'd try. I didn't know enough to go to like USC or UCLA library or something. So I was back visiting my dad in Wisconsin, and University of Wisconsin Madison Library, there was one book, How to Write a Screenplay.
Oh man, perfect.
It was written during World War II. No one had ever even taken it off the shelf. I literally picked it up, opened it, pages fell out. It was so old. But the format is still basically the same. So I thought, oh, okay, this is how you format something. And
just curious too. Like how do you describe what a screenplay is as opposed to like an actual story?
There's a whole language for a screenplay that's different from what people are used to if they're reading a short story or a novel or something. There's a lot of, on the one hand, there's a lot of shortcuts to a certain extent. On the other hand, there's very specific formatting that everyone expects. Everyone does the formatting except for Quentin Tarantino. He can do whatever he wants, apparently, which is fine.
Yeah, that's true. We always come to that same conclusion on this podcast.
Yeah.
Tarantino just does what he wants.
Yeah, exactly. So other than Quentin, it's basically following a certain formatting style. And when you deviate from that, people get freaked out or upset. And the format's been the same for 80 years, since talkies at least. So
yeah. Like a song structure, basically.
Yeah, and it'll be, instead of describing the setting that you're on a mountaintop, and the sun is in. It's like the exterior mountaintop, day, morning, evening, whatever the time may be. It's kind of a slug line, and then you describe, set up the scene.
Cool.
Some people write a lot of detail, some write less. It used to be that a lot of screen direction was written at like close up or tracking shot or something like that. That's pretty much fallen out of the wayside, although we just saw a screenplay by William Menahem for this picture that George Clooney directed that's coming out. I forget the title of it. And he had the total camera discovers this or that. So I'm like, okay, well, so people still do that, but generally it's kind of more of a general type of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I don't want to derail your story. I mean, if you want to pick it back up in Wisconsin, like I guess in the library.
So I found the book. Again, formatting, interior, scene, day, night, whatever, dialogue, how it's spaced out and everything. So okay. So came back out California, worked at night. Neighbors told me later, said, whatever this weird guy was, that his light was always on. In the middle of the night, you could see him sitting at the table in the window, like typing something. And this is so long as pre-computer, so it's, you didn't like to change things a lot back then because you'd have to retype the entire page. So,
oh yeah.
White out yet. Now, were you always? I mean, you've written some of the most legendary action films, especially. We talk about these films all the time. But did you ever have a propensity to? Would you always like action, or was that what was selling in the '80s, and you just kind of, like what was?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always liked action. Again, my background's in history, American history, world history, and everything, and I've always been drawn to action type of stories, historical stories. So when I had this opportunity, I thought, what am I going to write? I'm going to write a Western, because I love Westerns. Sure. And I wrote a Western. By the time I finished it, I'd lost track of this friend. So now I knew no one in the industry. And I thought, well, there's, I've heard somewhere I read that you have to have an agent. Agents are located in Beverly Hills. So I drove to Beverly Hills, found a phone booth in a parking lot that had a Yellow Pages, and sure enough, there was a listing for agencies. And I just plugging in money, so started with the A's. Hi, I've got a screenplay. Click. And I finally got somebody down in the B's to read the script. And I just went on about my regular stuff. Didn't know enough to follow up or anything. And a few months later, I got a nice rejection letter saying, it's actually pretty good for your first thing, but no one's doing Westerns. And I thought, oh man. I have a background in martial arts, so I had an idea for an action movie. John Woo ended up doing this type of picture later, Hard Boiled and so on. That was a combination of martial arts and guns.
Yeah.
The gunplay and everything.
Yep.
So that was the original version of An Eye for an Eye. It was the lead character was a martial artist, but he's also, used weapons. The weapons, when Chuck got involved, they decided to just go pretty much strictly with the martial art. And the way that happened was just one of these crazy things where, in the meantime, from getting the rejection for the Western and writing this script, I met a couple people at a camera rental house in Hollywood, and we became friends. And when I finished this An Eye for an Eye, I called up one of the guys and I said, you've actually worked on a movie. Can you read the script and just see what you think? No, why didn't go back to the original agent? I don't know. I didn't think of it. And this friend of mine said, he was assistant cameraman on a movie, and he knew this character actor guy. And he gave it to that guy. And the guy called me up, and this guy named Mel Novak, who was lots and lots of B action pictures back in the day. And Mel read the script. I love the script. I just did A Force of One with Chuck Norris, and he's looking for a project. So he got it to Chuck, and just a quick aside, the original version was only 70 pages long. And between the time when Mel gave it to Chuck and Chuck finally responded, I'd written another 30 pages because the first response was, I like this, but it's kind of short. So I thought, oh, here's the full version.
Yeah, that's great. And at that point, like, was Chuck, I know A Force of One was definitely known as well, but like he was kind of on his way. And like in 81, like I feel like that was like the beginning of like the action movies that we knew, because before that there was like James Bond, and I remember being younger and going backwards and watching like like the Sean Connery movies and thinking to myself like, oh, there's not really not much action in these. It wasn't until like later on in the 80s that they just went ridiculous and stuff. So you were right there at the beginning of that time. Like, did you feel that like what were some of the movies that were also out that you could mention?
Well, I kind of, speaking of earlier action movies, I mean, the Bruce Lee, all the Golden Harvest, and all those pictures I watched. Again, having interest in martial arts in the 60s, 70s, I watched all those. I loved Enter the Dragon probably 300 times.
Yeah, me too, I think.
And but it just was one of those things where I thought, well, they're doing all this stuff, but they haven't combined, action with guns and stuff with martial arts, and that would be cool to do.
So, we were talking about basically like the action movie. So like when you write a movie in particular, we don't really know. Like, you're a writer, like let's say for Eye for an Eye, like how involved are you after you give the script away?
What happened in this case is, it was my first script, first sale and everything. Got a great deal and all this stuff. Got hired to do the rewrite, and it was a small independent studio called Afghan Embassy. And
oh yeah, I remember seeing the logo.
Oh yeah.
And they did. I'm trying to remember the John Carpenter picture. They did some stuff that was really popular back then, and I kept calling the head of development saying, well, when do you want me to start the rewrite? So just wait. And even though they paid me, they hired someone else to do a rewrite on it. So that was kind of my thing, like, what? Wait a minute, what?
Is that a normal thing to do sometimes?
Yeah, usually you get a chance to at least do one rewrite. Like I said, or they'll pay you and have someone else do it. It's just, one of those things that you kind of never know how it's.
You on the set for any of these films too? Like when it goes to that point, like.
Yeah, but not an Eye for an Eye, and just to finish the Eye for an Eye story. So the picture got made. I got invited to the cast and crew screening, and I ended up knowing some of the stuntmen that worked on the picture. And at the screening, they set me up at a blind date with this beautiful woman that was a friend of theirs. They used to go over to her house and mow her lawn and play penny poker, and she'd make them spaghetti because everybody was starving.
Yeah.
And so we just had our 35th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Over.
Congrats. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Elizabeth Stevens professionally. So that was the best thing that came out of the whole thing. But
that and the Tanaka fight, though, those are the two things.
He was the nicest guy.
Yeah.
Tougher than anything, but he always on screen and he got the biggest kick out of people being afraid of like little kids. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, as a kid, that I always remembered that movie for that fight in particular, because all of us growing up, like we knew that, like we just knew the formula to action movies. It's like you have like the main henchman, you have the bad guy that doesn't fight as good as the henchman. That there's usually karate and drugs involved somewhere, and that's what it is. So like Russia too. Yeah. So Eye for an Eye, does it bring you to your next project, or is that something that you in
a very interesting roundabout way? But to answer your earlier question, actually, about you know, the extent of involvement. Like in Eye for an Eye, the original draft, I wrote out every punch, every kick, every shot.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And then Chuck and him said, you know, we're going to do that. It will be whatever, because everybody has different things that they're good at, or they want to, you know, they want to portray certain moves that they can do that no one else can, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
After that, I kind of got more general in the, you know,
What was what was it like working with Chuck for the first time there? Because I know you guys have a long relationship after that.
Yeah, we actually only met a few times. Actually, a friend of mine had introduced me to him on the set of The Octagon.
Okay.
And just kind of in passing, and I was like, wow, Chuck Norris, and I met another guy that Octagon who became a good friend, Tadashi Yamashita. I'm sure you've seen some of his pictures. And but so I didn't really work with Chuck much in Eye for an Eye, just a few meetings and so on, talking the story.
Yeah.
And then being new to Hollywood and everything, Eye for an Eye came out. It did very well. And I thought, oh, phone's going to start ringing, going to get jobs. It's going to be great. Going to be write movies. And money kept going out and phone didn't ring. So Elizabeth knew Chuck because we lived in San Fernando Valley at that time. And Chuck had one of his original karate skills was in Tarzana, California. And my stepdaughter, Jennifer, was going to the school, and Chuck used to go whenever they had belt testing. And he and Elizabeth hit it off. They'd always talk and everything. So Elizabeth knew Steve Carver, who directed An Eye for an Eye. And then Steve went on to direct Lone Wolf McQuade.
Okay.
So they had a screening of actually just the trailer for Lone Wolf McQuade. And Steve Carver invited Elizabeth. She brought him along. And Chuck was there. And after the screening, Chuck went up, are you still going out with that guy, James Bruner, who wrote An Eye for an Eye? And she said, I am. He said, do you have his phone number? Because I'd like him to write something.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. Can't hear you.
Back or no?
There you go. Yeah.
There you
There
go.
we go. We got you.
Yeah. Oh, that must be a weird thing on this end.
Sure.
Chuck lost his brother Waylon in Vietnam and wanted to do something to, honor guys my age and so on. So he wanted to, do a film about that. So he spent, I don't know, it was a long time writing Missing in Action. And I met a couple guys, one guy in particular, Jim Monahan, was a Green Beret, been a Green Beret for like 20 some years, multiple tours in Vietnam, tons of Purple Hearts and all this stuff. And he was very actively involved at that time in the early 80s with the real MIA situation and trying to, find if any guys were alive, get them out and so on. So he was basically a technical advisor, became my best friend, best man at my wedding, so on. So I get a lot of great stuff from him. And I actually just reread the original script a couple of weeks ago. And it's too bad they didn't make that, but that's.
Oh, it's really?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, anything in particular that you remember that was slightly different?
It was completely different.
It's completely different. Okay.
Well, I take it back. And I don't want to digress too much on this, but what happened with Missing in Action is Chuck was trying to get it, we were trying to get it financed, and I was helping out with that and all this stuff. So he called me up one day and he said, there's this producer that's interested in the script. And I just, I've met so many of these guys. Can you go have lunch with him to see what he has to say? So I went out to Malibu and met this guy. He was very interested. So I want to read the script. So I gave him a copy of the script. And Chuck called me and said, yeah, there's this new company called Canon.
Oh yeah. Show him the hat. Show him the hat.
Yeah, exactly. And they want to do missing in action. I got a meeting with this guy Menahem
Yeah.
something, and I'll call you. It's at 10 in the morning. I'll call you afterwards. So I'm waiting around noon, 2 in the afternoon. Geez, not like that he's actually good at communicating. And finally calls me like late in the day. Well, I went in and had the meeting, and they wanted to do missing in action, but they handed me a different script. It wasn't the one you wrote.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
And he said, I agreed to do that. They offered him, they made him a great deal. And so I said, but they're going to buy your script. So you'll at least get, you get paid from it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
Is that bittersweet sometimes though? Like you do get paid for your work, but sometimes it doesn't see the light of day. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
we actually have a number of friends that are really successful screenwriters. They've made fortunes working in studio pictures and have never had a picture made.
Wow.
So that, I mean, it's much, personal opinion, much better to get something on the screen, even if it's not, what you envisioned. It's still.
You're right. Yeah, for sure. And did
Now,
you? Go
sorry,
ahead,
but
Brian.
in like Missing in Action, now they filmed part 1 and 2 at the same time. Like, what was that whole?
Well,
Why did that
I'll
happen?
try to make this somewhat short. So the
Okay.
script that they gave Chuck and they wanted to make, Lance Hool was the producer, and then he ended up directing the movie. And this is how Canon operates. They gave Chuck the script, they made him a deal, and Lance found out, I think that night, that they didn't own the rights to the script. So he went out and optioned the script himself. That's how he got attached to it. That's how he got to direct it, so on. So they went to Canon, always had creative financing, to put it mildly. And St. Kitts was newly independent down in the Caribbean. So they went, Chuck, Lance and Aaron, everybody went down to St. Kitts to make this Missing in Action film. And I get a call from Aaron saying, I'm back in LA, pack your bag, you're coming down to St. Kitts. They already want to do a sequel and they want you to write it. And we're going to shoot the trailer for the sequel.
Amazing.
While we're
Yeah.
So
That's
good.
amazing.
Typical Canon.
all right. So I got down to St. Kitts and I took the original script. It was a much bigger production, like much bigger action. So I couldn't really use the bigger action stuff, but I used a lot of the story. I wrote a trailer. Some cooler heads prevailed for a change over there. They decided maybe we shouldn't do the trailer right now.
Yeah.
And so came back here, finished writing the screenplay. Now it had to be a sequel to this first movie. And so I had to make some adjustments to that and so on. And they hired Joe Zito to direct.
That's our guy right there. So we always bring up when we had Sam Furstenberg on, we're like, yo, where the hell is Joe Zito? Because we would love to have him on. But he told me he's in like Abu Dhabi or something, like directing like TV or something, because that guy made The Prowler. He made Invasion USA. He made Missing in Action and Friday the 13th Part 4. He's definitely one of our gods for sure.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, he's I like to say he's somewhere in the Middle East doing something that
yes
may not want to know about. I don't know.
Yeah. So
he was good. He was good to originally directed Delta Force, which would have been fantastic. But
yeah, he had that, and also they had him for like Spider-Man. I mean, like that company, as much as we love it from the outside. I couldn't imagine what it was like working for them, but like as fans, watching the documentary, it's a great story, but I don't think it seemed like a sustainable business model. It just made sense that it eventually evaporated. But looking back at it now, like what do you think of Canon? Like, do you look at it fondly or?
Yeah, and up until literally the very end of my time there, I actually had a great time because I got Menahem would just call me up and say, "Hey, starting a movie in 6 weeks. We don't have a script. You want to write it?" I'm like, yeah, of course.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that.
I mean, the pay was never that great, but it was good, and it was, having these pictures that were actually made is really. It was like I didn't go to. That was my film school. I always tell people.
Yeah.
Because he would call me in and say, "Hey, we shot this picture and it needs help, and we need somebody to look at the footage and figure out. We have 2 days that we can shoot, and we have the lead actor for 1 day. What can we shoot? And, write something." So that was a really good, good experience.
And by this time, like, by 84, by Missing in Action, you've already written a few, like, screenplays. Like, are you like at this point, like, you feel confident, like you feel you're getting better at what you're doing by 84?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's this whole thing, you can talk about something, but until you actually do it, and then you work on it and see the results, and then you working in collaboratively with different people is always interesting because everybody has different perspectives, and what makes sense to me, like, oh, it's on the page, other people go, no, they don't get it. So that was part of the whole learning process, and you still go through it even, to this day. And that's where Elizabeth has actually been kind of like a story editor and more from the beginning, helping with that kind of stuff. And every directors and producers we work with always call her the logic police.
Okay, that's good.
You'd be at a story meeting.
Yeah.
And going, yeah, and then they go like this, and they go over here, and they go, and we're all like, and she goes, oh, you know what? But then we have to change this and this and this and this. It's like, oh man,
yeah,
it's better to do it there and then to realize it, at the end.
That's great. I mean, you guys sound like a great team. Parker, you had a Missing in Action story, did you?
Oh yeah. So when I was a little kid, funny enough. So we all saw these movies like way.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. That's
awesome.
A great mug right there. I got the. These are my two favorites right here. So I took them from the DVD stash.
Awesome.
But I mean, we all saw these movies probably way earlier than we were supposed to. I mean, I think I was watching Invasion USA when I was like 8 years old. So, but I remember Missing in Action. I remember my parents bought me, so maybe this is their fault, bought me fake hand grenades from like Toys R Us or something. And every time I would grab these things, I would step, to the highest thing of my parents' stairs or a couch and just jump off like I was in Missing in Action with, Chuck Norris with the 2 hand grenades in slow motion.
Yeah, that is so funny. Like we grew up watching, Revenge of the Ninja, like all these movies, because I don't know, like back then, and even back then, like the VHS tapes. What was the VHS boom like for you?
Oh gosh, that was fantastic. It really kind of unbelievable, and that really helped me with Canon. Foreign sales and then VHS sales really were huge driving force. And as long as they stayed with their formula, they did really well. They probably still be in business, but they, got carried away with doing these, bigger, over the top. With Stallone, I want to work with Stallone. We're going to pay him $15 million. And
yeah,
arm wrestling, truck driver. Come on, guys.
I know, right? I mean, like, yeah. I mean, they should have gotten you to write that script. Definitely would have been no arm wrestling in that one. So that, like,
I actually read somewhere, and I hope it's true, but that Invasion USA and Gone with the Wind were the 2 highest grossing VHS sales for MGM, I think, home video.
I believe it.
At one point. Yeah.
I
It's good company.
It's really gratifying because there's still Invasion and Delta Force and Missing in Action are still popular worldwide. We still get income from literally all over the globe. And
I mean, look at us 3 idiots right here.
We talked about Invasion USA doing it around this time too, because we consider it a Christmas,
Christmas
movie.
movie.
Like some people think Die Hard is.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a Christmas movie.
So let's talk about that script, because that script is it really is like a fear like that people have, where it's like, oh, imagine, like, you know, because we live such a kind of like a carefree life. We don't really have the chaos that certain places have and stuff. So how did Invasion USA come about?
Well, it started because Menahem wanted Chuck to star in American Ninja. And I was hired to write the script.
Oh, wow.
Chuck did not want to do a ninja movie. He loved doing the martial arts in, Delta and Invasion and so on, but he didn't want to do just like basically a kung fu movie. And so I said to him and Aaron, I said, okay, don't worry, I've got an idea. And so the very basic idea was it's going to be, an undercover agent whose code name is American Ninja.
Okay.
So I wrote Invasion USA, and I had the idea, just as you guys were saying, it's something, we've seen in other countries and so on. It hasn't happened here. And thought, okay, if it did happen, also taking into it needs to be a movie and be, cool and big and all this stuff. How could it happen? So came up with that idea, wrote the script. Menahem literally read the draft. We had Chuck and Aaron and I had to sit in his office while he read the draft. And I can't remember if Zito was in there with us or not at that point. And he finished the script, put it down, this little grin, said, "Of course you cannot call it American Ninja."
Yeah. No.
I said, "How about Invasion USA?" Yeah.
That's what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great name completely. And he probably loved it. Did he actually read the whole script while you sat there?
I mean, he might have been skimming, but yeah.
What do you think the whole time he's reading it? Like, does he give away any, like, I mean, does he have a poker face, or do you feel like he's enjoying it?
He didn't. Yeah, he just kind of just like a regular guy you were watching, read something, which is boring watching someone reading.
Yes.
So he wasn't real.
He wasn't animated,
demonstrative or anything.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And,
I also read that film was very, I'm sure they all change a lot from what you've written and stuff like that. But there was a lot more background on the characters or something they cut out, or lost the audio.
Things that happened with the picture. Originally, what was finally released, the woman reporter had a much bigger role, and when we saw Zito, the director's cut, Zito's first cut, he probably cut out 20 to 25 minutes, and
oh wow,
her character was really telling the story, and we were seeing things escalate and consequences and so on through her eyes. And she's a really nice woman, but her performance just didn't work. And Elizabeth and I were on set for part of the picture, and there were like 12 takes of saying, "Hey, cowboy." None of them just worked. And again, it just one of the things didn't work. 20 to 25 minutes of story really is gone from the released version. And which is too bad, because it really made the story even bigger, and you understood more of what was going on and so on.
Yeah.
And you said you were on set. Were you on set when they blew up that neighborhood for that epic scene?
No, but
No.
What kind of funny, I guess I could say this now. So Zito, the original draft, Zito was hired to direct it. Chuck was working on, he was working in Chicago. gosh, I don't know, like Andy Davis picture.
Was it Code of
Code of
Silence?
Silence.
Code of Silence, yeah.
So Joe wanted to go location scouting, and he wanted me to go to see what we could find, and then we could incorporate it in the picture. He said it's better if you see it, and you come up with stuff, and we can actually do it. So we stopped in Chicago, saw Chuck, and Zito brought the release print of Missing in Action. Chuck hadn't seen it, no one had seen it, so we had a screening. It's just Chuck and Aaron and I and Zito and Chuck's agent, manager, lawyer, and watched the movie, and Andy Davis, and watching the movie like, whoa! It was the first time I'd seen it, music, all the stuff. Like, whoa! At the end, I'm like, oh man, goosebumps. So we get in the van to go back to the hotel. Chuck's manager leans over to me and said, "I don't think it'll hurt his career."
Yeah.
Then we just watched the same movie.
Yeah. I mean, like that movie. I mean, seriously, like this was the whole idea of the episode, because we love the movie so much, because it's when it comes to action films, like the movies today look like video games. Like they don't even look like real action whatsoever. This movie looks like they followed a team of mercenaries and blew up everything. And it was just like, I mean, first of all, I want to know who wrote Billy Drago getting shot in the dick and then the girl got there. You wrote that? Was that you? You're like, Chuck.
He shot two guys in the dick in that movie.
Well,
Yeah.
Richard Lynch is amazing. He was so good in that movie.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. And I'm embarrassed to say, I don't remember the name of the actor that played the secondary guy, Nico.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys did a fantastic job. It really, Richard was just phenomenal.
Great casting. Yeah, for sure. And so when that movie came out, like it was kind of like a hit, right? So like at this point, you're kind of like riding high, right?
Yeah.
Right?
So it was, even though, like I said, I was disappointed that so much had to be cut out.
Sure.
It's still, it's great to see movies with an audience, with a real audience, not a Hollywood audience, and see the reaction, because that's like when Missing in Action came out, we went down to Hollywood Boulevard and saw the picture with like a real audience, and it was, people stood up cheering at the end. So
that's amazing. Yeah. It's like writing an album and seeing it, for sure. And at this point, like what are, what's your life, your professional life like in like 1985, 86?
Well, honestly, Canon, I was working continually for Canon. I did a lot of stuff that, I didn't ask for credit on, stuff that, and they ended up not making it or whatever. But so I was working nonstop, which was great. And it was great again, because working with different directors, and so on, was really, because I was getting paid to get an education in film.
That's great. Yeah, for sure. And what didn't come out that broke your heart in particular, if you have one of those?
The original sequel to Delta Force would have been really good. It would have been really, really terrific. And that got derailed because Michael Winter, Menahem wanted Michael Winter to direct the sequel, and they flew me over to London. I was supposed to meet with Michael for like a couple days and come back to LA, write the script. And I don't know if you guys know Michael Winter, know much about him.
Yeah, we know his work for sure. Yeah, that would be a good pick for Delta Force sequel. Yeah,
but he was a real wild man, to put it mildly.
Okay.
And just to set up this story real quick. So I fly over to London. I'd of course seen Death Wish, Shadow's Land. I love these pictures. I was like, I'm thinking the same thing. Great idea. And so get invited, meet him at his house for lunch. And I take a cab. It's beautiful red brick, literally Victorian mansion, famous Victorian artists lived there, National Register, all this stuff. Go to the door, knock on it. This butler guy opens the door, and he's twitching, kind of like this. And then follow me, sir. Takes me upstairs, and I see there's like a maid in the full maid uniform, dusting. And she's kind of going twitching. It's kind of unusual, but so we go upstairs, and Michael's study / office is overlooking the front door from the garden. Big open windows, gorgeous, just, again, all Victorian, perfect condition. And he's sitting behind his desk smoking a big stogie. And somehow the subject came up about the staff and being so nervous. And he said something like, I guess that's because I maybe don't treat them so well. So what would you do if I treated you like that? And I looked at him, I'd pick you up and throw you out the window. And he took his cigar out. This is a movie moment, leans back, and I was his best friend from then on.
That's it. Yeah, it's the way. Yeah, there's the jailhouse rules, man. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
You can't let anyone do that to you. Wow, that's great. So that.
He ended up, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to finish it. So you wanted me to stay in London and write the script. So I'm writing the script.
What year was this though? Because because the original, so the actual sequel that came out was 1990. So it was like between 86 and 90 then?
Yeah, this is probably 87. Maybe.
Okay.
And so I have my friend Jim Menahem, who I met through Missing in Action. And one of the many things he did is back then, he told me about the Delta Force. No one knew about it. He helped train the original Delta Force, one of the original trainers. So he told me, there's this unit no one knows about. It's called the Delta Force. And they went, people know the failure in Iran. And I actually pitched it to Menahem. And like, no one's to do that. And a year later, Menahem calls me from New York. He had seen a little article, probably this big, in Time magazine about the Delta Force. Didn't it really say what it was? Calls me up, Jimmy, Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson, the Delta Force.
Yes.
You want to write it?
Yes.
Like, yes, I want to write it. Are you kidding?
That's awesome. I forgot Bronson was attached to it.
So
Yeah.
That's the one that got away. That would have been, I think, a standout action picture for the time with those two guys. I had a whole scenario. I wrote a treatment, and
I mean, yeah, just like what would have been like the plot, like if you were going to write the back of the VHS.
Well, it was it's 87. So basically, the idea was, and this happened in real life later, that a busload of international tourists were kidnapped by terrorists at one of not the pyramids, but at one of the big historical sites in Egypt. Delta didn't go in. But the idea was that Delta went in and it was going to be all the good guys killed except for Chuck and Bronson. So they are having to hold off the terrorist hordes, rescue these busloads of international tourists until the end of the picture when the whole Delta Force comes in and gigantic, battle in the ancient Egyptian, great historical site there.
Yeah, listen.
I would have loved this.
I know. I would have loved to have seen that. Totally.
I don't know if it didn't happen just because the budget would have been too much or what.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Were you conscious of certain things that you were writing with the budget then in mind? Like, you're like, okay, I can't really go too crazy because we're going to be at like 5 million or whatever.
They actually never told me to do that, which was in hindsight kind of surprising. But I think they also were looking at it as they weren't quite sure, because everything they did was based on their foreign pre-sales. And they did pre-sales on the Delta Force with Norris and Bronson. So those buyers are probably disappointed, but
Yes, it's amazing. Like those like there's a on YouTube, there's a reel of everything that they would I guess promote at like Cannes or whatever those festivals were, and there was so many movies that never even came out, but it's amazing. They had this like, you know, like, I don't know, 30-second reel of each one of these movies and stuff, but it's like, oh, Michael Dudikoff and Spider-Man and all this other stuff. So I love it. What a great I don't know, it just seemed like I said, looking back at the documentary, which I'm pretty sure you were in.
I was in one of them, which
yeah, you were in
two, I think.
Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo, yeah.
But here's another question. It's at that time, I know censors were like a big thing. Like, did you get any backlash for like violence and action movies that you were aware of?
Not really. I mean, I never. Again, it was pre-Twitter and everything, so it probably saved us. So we probably would have been. Although when you look at John Wick or any of the John Wick pictures, our stuff is completely tame compared to that. Even though it's, as you were saying earlier, we had it was real stunts.
Real stuff, yeah.
You know, it wasn't green screen and CGI. It was
I
guys doing crazy stuff for real.
I know in the UK release of Invasion USA, they cut the scene where Billy Drago gets shot in the dick and the girl doing the cocaine. They cut that whole scene out for violence.
What about the girl? What about putting the girl putting the star on the tree? I was like, man, I love it. It's so good. They're about to ruin their Christmas.
Brutal.
So real quick, speaking of the Delta Force, so like that's a movie that I don't know if Langan is a big fan of it, but like me and Parker are I grew up loving that movie, and you figure 86, I'm 8 years old watching this movie. I didn't really get the concept as to the Israeli connection and all that other stuff, but I just knew that I loved Chuck Norris, and I knew that he was going to beat the shit out of Robert Forster. So you wrote that with Menahem?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was again, the original picture was Chuck and Bronson. I gave you the scenario.
Yeah.
And then when the TWA hijacking happened, Menahem had directed a picture, Operation Thunderbolt, about the Raven and Tibet.
Yep.
It was actually probably the best thing he'd done. And he saw this as an opportunity to do that type of movie with a budget and be in control. And so he wanted to direct it. And again, Zio was going to originally direct it. So I wrote a draft here. Menahem went to Israel to start pre-production and everything. Had me and Elizabeth come over, and I ended up literally sitting shoulder to shoulder with him at his desk in his Tel Aviv office all day writing stuff. And I'd come back the next morning. He'd stayed up pretty much all night rewriting it, and I'd have to spend half the day trying to fix the improvements he made during the night. And I finally one day said to him, why don't we just share the writing credit? He said, okay, but you get first position. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
You're doing like twice the work.
Yeah. Editing too. But he sounds, the thing about Menahem, he sounds like a lot of fun, or he sounded like a lot of fun, obviously. And somebody who loved movies and was always like, I feel like I could have ran into him in the street and been like, hey, you don't know me, but I have an idea for a movie. And he'd be like, tell me about it.
Oh yeah, he was totally like that. And until the end, when they were in such financial trouble, when there was like terrible, pressure and everything.
Right.
There was a lot of fear and anxiety and stuff. Yeah, he was just like that. He'd be fun. We were invited up to his condo in Tel Aviv and for dinner and all this stuff. And he was a great host. And, we actually had a good time. And then he loved movies, really loved them. And a couple of quick things on Delta Force, though. So writing the movie, the hostages, I mean, literally they're across the border in Lebanon. So they're right there. We don't know what's going to happen. We're thinking the Deltas maybe is going to come in. And so finally one day he says, well, we don't have an ending. Well, we know the ending has to be, they've got to, in the movie at least, they've got to save the hostages. He says, we don't know what's going on up there. Jimmy, you will go to Beirut. You will go to the Beirut airport. You will find out what is going on.
Wow, that's so great. Like, what do you say to that?
I'm like, this 6-foot blue-eyed American. I don't speak Arabic. I kind of stand out like a sore thumb. I don't think it's such a good idea. And luckily, Ronnie Akov, a couple of the other thing cannon guys there were like, no, not such a good idea. Maybe. Okay. And so the so the ending was just, of course, fictionalized. So, but we were location scouting, and they found a location for the school. And if you remember the picture, hostages are in this room. There's like 3 stories of the school.
Yep.
Hostages in the basement. Hostages are on the middle floor. So we go to location scout. We walk into the basement, looking up at the ceiling. The basement is so tall, ceiling. And Martin said, Jimmy, I can't figure out how we get the last guy up in the room. So, because in the script, I've written how they actually would do it. And which was basically guys who were actively in Delta at that time were friends of Menahem. And they told us stuff that was not general pulp knowledge, but it was out to the bad guys, so it was okay if we, did something. And they basically create a pyramid type thing, just unfolds, go up, and use a bomb blade that they blow a hole through the ceiling and just literally stand up in the room and kill all the bad guys. So, which would have been awesome, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we're standing in the basement, and he said, well, I can't figure out who got the last guy in the room. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, if we use the teeter-totter, he was thinking of a circus teeter-totter where the guy's standing, another guy jumps here, and this guy flies through the air, through the hole, lands in the room. That was his one idea. So he'd forgotten what was in the script. And the other one was they're going to have a mini trampoline and run and jump and fly up through the air and do the thing.
I like it.
And I'm thinking, oh my God.
I a 7-year-old me would have been all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
For sure. Yeah, that I rented the shit out of that movie. The score was so good. The cast was great. Steve James was in there. Liam Neeson had a little bit part in there too. It's just Shelley Winters just randomly in there.
There was the original version was over 4 hours long.
Oh, wow.
And again, if it had been done more currently, they would have saved that version. It would have been a great miniseries.
Yes, it would have been like a
Because there was
Netflix.
A lot of stuff with the hostages and their backstories and all this stuff, and with the Delta guys too. And it was just too long. And I've checked into it over the years, and I guess they didn't save any of the elements or anything from any of the pictures. So the missing stuff from Invasion, the extra stuff from Delta is
gone. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, that would have been great. Like now with Netflix or like any streaming service, like you could turn anything into like a 5-hour thing, so it's you could tell that story.
Special release DVD or something with all
the all that stuff. Brian's got all of it up there, right?
Yeah.
He's got like 10 versions of Delta Force. But so like towards the end, I know that you ended up doing The Last Missing in Action. And I don't know, did you have anything to do with the Delta Force 2 that came out with Aaron?
Because what happened when I was working with Michael Winner, similar to what happened working with Menahem, is Michael wanted 10 pages a day. So I just they rented me a flat. I come back to the flat, come back the next morning with 10 pages. So I did that. He would read them, go, this is shit, this is shit. He'd rewrite, completely change the story and the characters. And after a while, I just thought,
Yeah, I'm out.
Michael Winner, I'm not going to,
Yeah.
he likes me, but this is what
Yeah.
he wants to do. So,
Yeah, you could be friends, but you don't have to do business, I guess.
yeah. And
Yeah.
when the script got turned in, I came back. I walked into the Canon story department, and the head of the story department said, "What happened to you?" Because they read the script, Michael Winter script, to put my name on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I didn't write it. Michael Winter wrote it. He was like, "Oh my gosh,
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and at this time, so like 88, 89, like I guess it's kind of like the beginning of the end of canon. So as far as like a future, like an action writing screenwriter like yourself, what are you thinking? Like, what's the future plan at this time? Like around the time of Braddock, let's say.
Yeah, like I was hoping, I felt that the original script for Braddock was the best script of all, and it didn't end up getting made that way. But the original script was really very emotional, very really good. Zito was originally going to direct that, and they went through like 10 directors, and that's where I got fired by Menahem. Is in that process. I'd written 3 or 4 drafts, I think, and they loved the last draft. He called me in the office and he said, "Jimmy, I need to pay you half of what we guaranteed you for this script." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, Aaron Norris's deal is tied to your deal, and I don't want to pay Aaron this much money." Not that it was much money, but I mean,
yeah.
And I said, "Well, I already wrote 4 drafts and everything." He said, if you don't take the half the money, and you'll never work for Canon again." And at this point, we had CBS wanted to do a Delta Force series, and I had written a pilot script for them with Jim Monahan wrote it with me, so we had real great inside stuff from Delta, and that was active. And I said, "Oh, okay, we'll do the TV thing." "No, we're not doing that either." I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So that was my last thing there. And it's like, okay, now what do I do? I've been working for however many years nonstop, got all these movies out and everything. And so it was an interesting transition time.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And from there, like, just fill us in basically on what happened and what you're doing now.
Well, Elizabeth and I said she'd been working alongside, story editor, ideas, all this stuff, dialogue, and all along. And I finally said to her one day after the Braddock thing, I said, "Let's write a script together." She said, "No, I couldn't do that." And we had a story that we had been pitching around and got interest, but never could get it going. So let's just write the script, and we'll see how the relationship goes, how the work goes, and everything. And so we wrote a draft, and Richard Zanuck read it and called us in for a meeting, and he loved the writing, didn't want to do that particular story, and he said, "What else what other stories do you have? I want to work with you guys." And we're like I'm thinking, okay, I've been doing stuff with Chuck Norris and Canon, and this is Richard freaking Zanuck, and this is something's right about this working together thing.
Yeah.
And so we ended up writing a project for him. Hasn't been made, he's passed away, but it's a historical thing. So hopefully one day that'll get made.
Because you're a big history buff for sure, right?
A lot of everything pretty much, other than
what is the most fascinating time for you that you like, go back to? Like, what's your favorite era to read about or to get creative with?
I like, there's so many, but I mean, World War II era, 30s, someone really in the early 50s kind of thing always really fascinating. There's a lot of great stories and a lot of it's become current day has been a little less interesting to me personally, just because with the instantaneous communications and all these things, people are still making good pictures of history. And so with the contemporary, I think this contemporarily it's less interesting, just because, again, instantaneous communications and, we're sitting here and we're all probably in different parts of the country. Doesn't matter, right? We're interacting and all that stuff, which is cool. But I think in earlier days when there was more mystery, I guess, to things. It's kind of
Listen.
So we have Elizabeth and I we just finished a draft. Can't really discuss the exact thing, but it's a period, 1930s historical thing based on, it's a true story, and we knew one of the guys that was involved in it. And we just finished a draft of that for a company, so waiting to see what happens with that. And we have our movie, Montford, the Chickasaw Rancher, just came out on Netflix last month.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's up on Netflix now?
Yeah, and we're our real names are on as associate producers. We used we wrote it for the Chickasaw Nation in Arizona. Been doing some movies on tribal history.
Yeah.
And they hired us to write this story, and it's phenomenal, true story. This guy was Chickasaw. His mother was Chickasaw. His dad was an English Shakespearean actor. Born in 1832. Sorry, became from dirt poor. Became one of the biggest cattle barons in Oklahoma. His son helped found the University of Oklahoma, and so it is a terrific story. And but we used my great grandmother. My mom's side was Cherokee Indian, so we used her name. Just kind of her as the script, Lucy Tennessee Cole. So if you see the picture,
that's great. And now with something like Netflix for people to get things made, it's such a great vehicle. Hulu, Amazon Prime, all this stuff, and you get to work with your wife. You guys seem to have an amazing relationship. You get to do a lot of creative things together. So what a great life. Right?
Yeah, and it's all because she's much smarter than I.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to be, for sure. And it's at any point in time, do you ever look back at the movies that you wrote in the 80s? Do you miss writing that stuff, or do you feel like you made your mark?
Oh, I loved it. I love those kind of movies, and I'm less enamored of current movies just because of the CGI and green screen.
Yeah. I hate it. We all do.
And I think audiences don't even know, there's subconsciously at least a realization that something's more real in the older pictures, when it wasn't some guy at a computer creating this crazy stuff.
Yeah, for people like us, like growing up and stuff, I think that was like the heyday for sure. Like the 80s really, those movies really just, we still talk about them now. Like the 70s were cool too. 90s had its moments, but like the 80s, like when we had Sam Furstenberg on, we talked about Revenge of the Ninja and all the cool stuff that he got to do as well. It was just a great era, and it's, you listen, like you wrote movies that will live on forever. So, you know what I mean? Like you're drinking out of an invasion.
Like that.
You're making it.
No complaints on this end.
Yeah, you're drinking out of an Invasion USA mug. I don't know, Brian. Why don't you have that mug? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I feel very upset that I don't know.
No, he's got the shirt on. Get out of here.
That's great.
Let's see if I can do this. No.
Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I want to ask you one last question on my part. I don't know if they have any questions, but in that era, in the 80s, what was one movie that you didn't write that just blew you away from that 80s era, that you were like, wow, that's a great script, great action?
sure there's more than one. My
Okay, give me a few.
I'm thinking actually something a little earlier, like anything Milius did, like it's the 70s, but the original Dillinger,
Mhm.
Wind in the Lion. I think Wind in the Lion, I think I sat through at the theater twice. Just, I was like, oh my gosh, at the end. And I'm sure there's other ones, but I'm like, oh.
Okay, yeah, that's fun.
Right.
You know, did you guys have anything else?
Brian, you got some?
I just wanted to touch on guns for Invasion USA because it was such a big part of that. I mean, between the explosions and the guns, I mean, you had like the M16s, the Uzis, the bazookas. I mean, did you guys actually sit down and have like a meeting and just say like, where the hell are we going to find like who had these ideas to use all these different weapons? Was it somebody on set that, was like a weapons guy?
Well, some of it was in the script, like Chuck using the twin Uzis and everything,
Yes.
because trying to come up with something, that would be memorable, which, that sure worked. And the good thing about Zito, I was starting to tell you earlier, we went on this location scout and, he told me, he said, I want to get you away from Chuck and Aaron. So we're going to go to the locations and we're going to see what we can do. And then, you guys work together and so on. And that's where we found out about the houses that they were going to tear down to expand the Atlanta airport. And so that sequence was like, oh my gosh, we can do what? We have how many real suburban homes?
Amazing.
And there's terrorists come to the country and we can. So, and the same thing with that shopping mall. They're going to renovate them all. We can drive this giant truck through these stores and it would have been, I don't know what the budget would have been if you had to actually build that stuff.
Oh, a lot.
So it was like, we
lot.
were blessed. And then with the actual invasion, I guess, we're looking at the beach and everything. It's kind of, we get landing craft. We get World War II landing craft. Okay, yeah, it makes no sense, but it's visually the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And that whole thing. So it was great to be able to walk through a lot of that stuff and come up with, different things that ended up being, spectacular on screen. And but I was going to say something earlier. So Invasion, 25 minutes get cut out. They're filming the picture. We were there for part of the time. Get an emergency call. You've got to come down to Atlanta. Why? Well, we changed the ending, but it doesn't work. So what do you mean you changed the ending? The whole picture is leading up to the ending. No, you got to come down. We've got, we have another week. We have a week to shoot. We got Richard Lynch for this much time and so on. You have to figure out an ending. Like, oh my gosh. And honestly, I tried to find the original script to see what the original ending was. I can't remember what it is today. So I had to go down to Atlanta, see what they'd done, see the location and go, oh, okay, how can we do this with Chuck's got it. You were saying earlier, there's always the main bad guy and there's the sidekick that's deadly,
always.
but a little less so.
Yep.
How are we going to do this with? And so that's the bazooka stalking or whatever at the end. That was basically done on the fly because they had basically filmed themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
and needed to have an ending. So
that's great.
One of you guys maybe heard this story. No, the scene where they're dropping the leaflets from the helicopters. So I wrote out a leaflet like what an official leaflet would have been, but it's been. I forget all the details, but somebody stay in your homes till you hear from. There'll be an announcement, and Elizabeth and I were down there. We're going out to dinner with Chuck and his wife. We're in the limo. He gets this phone call. Gets up. Chuck always has a pretty good disposition, and he's all upset. What's wrong? Oh, you know, the leaflets they dropped? Yeah. And instead of dropping leaflets that said, Atlanta, thank you for letting us film here. We love you, Cannon Films. They dropped all the leaflets looked like official warning things to get off the street.
Yeah.
And the I can't remember, it was a Buckhead or something. One of the local police departments had just gotten a phone call. 3 little old ladies had been hiding in their basement for 3 days.
Oh my God.
They
That's
called the
great.
police and says it's safe to come out.
Oh my God.
Doc was livid. It was hilarious, but
That's
it
great.
was so mad.
Yeah. God.
Oh.
Great story.
I gotta ask you one thing before we let you go. It says in your IMDb profile that you wrestled a bear once. Is that true?
Forgot about that.
Back in the day, I'm from Wisconsin, and at one point I wanted to be a professional wrestler. So I was, you know, I weighed about 50 pounds more than I do now. I got up to 225. I couldn't get bigger without steroids. I didn't want to do it. So my roommate at the time was, and I didn't know it when we became roommates, was an ex-con who had been in and out of prison for years, a bank robber. Nicest guy in the world, and he was really into lifting weights. And so, yeah, and back then, every year there was a sports show, big sports show in Madison and Milwaukee. And the highlight was bear wrestling. This guy, wrestler Tuffy Truesdale, had a bear named Victor. He's a wrestling bear. And my roommate Gary said, yeah, I wrestled him before. It's not hard. You just, I'm like, you know, I don't know. He said, no, it's okay. He said, I'll go first. You watch me. You watch what I do, and you kind of follow. So we get there. We sign up. I text his house. Say, okay, you guys. All right. You points to me. You're first. I think, oh my God. So I have 3 or 4 pictures that going in like this with the bear, going down like this, and the bear laying on top of me. And the bear weighed like 500 pounds or something. There's no way. Once it got out, that was it. So
Yeah.
I didn't make the 2-minute time limit, but I did wrestle the bear and
Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea. Like, so much fake stuff makes it to the internet that I was like, no way that's real, but it's real.
I had to know.
You were the first person that we've had on that wrestled the bear, so thank you for that. I just want to say it's time to die. James, man, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to 3 strangers from Long Island, New York. Thank you for the movies that you made that we still watch. Brian, what are you watching as we do this?
In the background, I'm watching Delta Force, so there you go.
So, yeah, thank you so much for doing it.
Thank
and
you.
you know, I'll put this up soon because I don't know. I'll add it.
It's Christmas time. You got to have Invasion USA for
That's
Christmas,
it.
you know?
yeah, exactly.
Amen.
It's like Christmas.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Guys, very much. Take care. Happy holidays to everybody.
You too.
Yes, you too.
All right, bye.
All right,
Take
bye.
care. Cheers.